we're going to continue talking about writing linear equations. Our essential question for this lesson, how do we write an equation in point-slope form? And then what are the similarities and differences between slope-intercept form and point-slope form? So there are three forms of a linear equation. We have the slope-intercept form, which we've been working with. Okay, so that one is the y equals mx plus b. Then we have point slope. That's the one that we're going to be working with today on this lesson. That's y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And we're going to see that again below. And then later, we're going to talk about standard form. So standard form of a linear equation is ax plus by equals c. Again, that one we will discuss later. Right now, we are going to focus on the point-slope form. So again, point-slope form, given a point x1, y1 with a slope of m, then you can write your linear equation y minus y1 equals m times the quantity x minus x1. Okay, next we'll look at an example of how we use that equation. So our first example, write an equation of the line in point-slope form that passes through the point negative 3, 1 and has a slope of 3. So the negative 3 we're going to label as our x1. The 1 we're going to label as our y1. That's our point. And then our slope is our 3. That's our m. So write your equation, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Plug the information into the correct spots. So I have y minus y1 is the one value of the point. So y minus 1 equals m, which is 3, times x minus a negative 3. And be careful when you have negative values. So here's the x1 right there. Right there. So that's our negative 3. When you have the two negatives together, or the minus a negative, remember that can simplify, x plus 3. This is your final answer. You're not going to do any other rewriting right now. The reason is I asked for point-slope form. If I ask for point-slope form, then that is how you will leave your answer in point-slope form. So y minus 1 equals 3 times the quantity x plus 3. Next example, we're going to write the equation of a line through the points negative 2, 3, and 1, negative 1 in point-slope form and slope-intercept form. So we're going to start looking at the two different formats. Now remember what we need for point-slope form. There are two pieces of information we need. One is the slope, so you need the slope, the m value. Second is a point. Well, in this particular case, we have 2 points to choose from, so we've got the point part covered. What we don't have is a slope. So we are going to start by finding the slope. So the slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So then label your points. So we can use this first one as x1, y1. The next one is x2, y2. And you're going to plug the numbers into the correct spots. So our y2 we labeled as negative 3 minus the y1, which is 3, divide by x2, which is 1, minus x1, which is negative 2. And then do some simplifying. So on top, negative 3 minus 3 is negative 6. And then on bottom, remember the minus a negative is the same as adding the opposite. Makes them positive. So 1 plus 2 is 3. Simplify, negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. So that is our slope. That is our m. And then you can use either point. So I'm going to show both. So y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. I'm going to plug in the slope and the first point. So y minus, my y1 is 3, equals m, which is negative 2, times x minus x1, which is negative 2. So remember, the minus and the negative make a plus. So that is one way you could write it. Or, remember, we had 2 points. So you could use the other point to plug in if you like. Remember, it doesn't matter which point you label as x1, y1 and which you label as x2, y2. So I could switch these and label this one as my x1, y1 and plug it in, y minus y1. So we're going to use that number this time, so that makes it a plus 3 equals our slope, negative 2 times x minus x1. In this case, we're again using this point right here, so that's our 1. This is the other point slope form. Now, if I ask you to write something in point slope form where you're given 2 points and you have to find the slope first, you can use either one. You do not have to give me both. You only have to give me one of those values. Now, another part of the problem said to write it in slope-intercept form. So we're going to use our point slope form to rewrite into slope-intercept. Okay, so right now, this and this is our point slope form. If you use more than one format, you need to make sure that you label which one is which. So that is the point slope form, and now we're going to rewrite it. Okay, now is when the other part comes in. Okay, so we'll distribute y minus 3 equals negative 2x minus 4. Negative 2 times 2 gives me the minus 4. Add 3 to both sides. We get y equals negative 2x minus 1. So that format is slope-intercept form. Okay, so now I'll check with the other point slope form and rewrite. So we'll distribute that negative 2. We get y plus 3 equals negative 2x plus 2 minus 3 on both sides. We get y equals negative 2x minus 1. Hopefully you recognize that we get the exact same slope-intercept form both times, which then verifies that the 2 original point slope forms, that both of these are the same equation. Okay, just different numbers have been plugged in, but when you rewrite them, they are the exact same equation. They both equal the y equals negative 2x minus 1. Next example. We're now going to use our point slope form to graph an equation. So it's very helpful to first write out what the formula is. It helps you to identify correctly the values that are needed. So first, write formula so you can match up your points and your slope. Okay, you're next going to identify the point used in the point slope form and the slope. So over here, I'm going to identify my point, okay, the x1, y1, and this you have to be careful with. So here's the x right there. Note that in the formula, there is a minus sign. There's a minus in the formula. If you look at the equation that I have, there's a plus. So what kind of a number does the x have to be so that I get a plus 2? Hopefully you recognize that the x has to be a negative 1. Let me just show you real quick what I mean. So if I go x, I'm sorry, I said negative 1. I meant negative 2. So if I put the minus from the formula, and then if my x is negative 2, what happens with 2 minuses next to each other? Changes to a plus. And that's what we have above, x plus 2. So the x value has to be a -2. Then we go to the y value. Notice on the y value, there's a minus in the formula, and when you look at the equation, there's a minus in the equation. So the y1 value is the 2. So the y1 is a +2. So we've identified our point, then we identify our slope, and that one's straightforward. Here's my m, so the number that relates to the slope is 1/2. So once you've identified the parts that you need, you're going to then plot the point. So it was -2, 2. So I plot the point. Then, starting at that point, you'll use the slope to get more points. So we're going to start at -2, 2. I already have that point there. -2, 2. It's a +1/2, so the top number's a 1. That means you go up 1 and to the right 2. So there's my next point. Up 1 to the right 2. My next point. Up 1, right 2. So if you went up right, you could go down left and get a few more points. And then draw your line all the way through the points. Okay, so we draw a line all the way through the points with arrows at the end, because if we made the graph bigger, the line would keep on going. So make sure you have your arrows at the end. That's how you graph using an equation in point-slope form. All right, so now here's a little bit of practice for you. So work on this. In class next time, we will go over these so you can check your solutions. And then we'll do a little more practice with both types of equations, the point-slope form of an equation and slope-intercept form of equation. So I'll see you in class.